And Bakerloo Line trains are still not stopping at Charing Cross following that fire alert. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking?
Not a line, I've never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocks me.
This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good bank holiday evening to you. It's 7 o'clock. And tonight, welcome to the Farage Show with me. Standing in, I'm Martin Daubry. Now, Nigel Farage joins me after he sparks huge fury for saying some Muslims do not share British values. Well, do you agree with Nigel? Well, in the next hour, we'll hear both sides of the debate and speak to the man himself who joins me here in the studio in Westminster. Plus, National Service. Is Rishi Sunak also a winner with this policy idea? We've also got the Deputy Leader of George Galloway's Workers' Party of Britain in the studio. Well, that's coming up, but first it's your news headlines with Theo Chikomba.
It's 7 o'clock in the GB newsroom. I'm Theo Chikomba. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has described the strike, which reportedly killed 45 people in the southern Gazan city of Rafah, as a tragic mishap. Mr. Netanyahu told the Israeli parliament it was vital that Israel took every precaution possible to protect civilians caught up in the fighting for Gaza. Earlier, Israeli forces said they were investigating reports of an exchange of fire between Israeli and Egyptian soldiers close to the crossing. The IDF said a shooting incident occurred on the Egyptian border. It's understood that the incident is under review and discussions are being held with the Egyptians. The Prime Minister has defended his plan to make all 18-year-olds carry out national service, describing it as modern and bold. Rishi Sunak says the proposals will mean young people will get the skills and the opportunities they need, which will serve them well in life. He says it will make society more cohesive.
I believe this is the right thing to do because this is how we'll deliver a secure future for everyone and our country. We're not going to do that without taking bold action, and that's a type of leadership that I offer. And this modern form of national service will mean that young people get the skills and the opportunities they need, which is going to serve them very well in life. It's going to foster a culture of service, which is going to be incredibly powerful for making our society more cohesive. And in a more uncertain and dangerous world, it's going to strengthen our country's security and resilience. So for all these reasons, I think this is absolutely the right thing to do.
Meanwhile, the Labour leader has described the Conservatives' plan to reintroduce national service as desperate. Speaking after his first keynote speech of the campaign, Sir Keir Starmer dismissed the Prime Minister's proposals.
Got desperate policies being made up on the hoof by the Tory party, and then the image of their party arguing about the policy they only announced in the last couple of days. And that, in a way, is the choice at the election, a Labour Party that is laser focused on the issues that really matter to people in saying we're going to fight for you, and a Conservative Party that's out of road, out of ideas, driven by chaos and division, and that has a cost, a human cost.
A Tory MP has been suspended by the Conservative Party for backing Reform UK's candidate in the Telford seat she is vacating. Lucy Allen, who is standing down at the general election, said on social media she'd be supporting Alan Adams to be the town's next MP. A spokesman for the Conservative Party said Miss Allen had been suspended from the party with immediate effect. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alert by scanning the QR code on your screen or going to gbnews/alert. Now it's back to Martin.
Thank you, Theo. Now, as the general election campaign begins to heat up, GB News presenter Nigel Farage appeared on Sky News with Trevor Phillips yesterday, warning the biggest issue the country faces is the population explosion. Well, during the controversial interview, Nigel warned of how a growing number of Muslims loathe British values.
About Muslims here? We are. And I'm afraid I found some of the recent surveys saying that 46% of British Muslims support Hamas, support a terrorist organisation that is prescribed in this country.
Well, perhaps unsurprisingly, the usual suspects have hit back at Nigel with the claims his comments were offensive and, of course, Islamophobic. But with recent polling showing that 46% of British Muslims do support Hamas, is Nigel right to discuss this, or is he stirring up racial hatred? Well, Conservative Minister Anne-Marie Trevelyan appeared to back part of what Nigel said on LBC this morning.
The vast proportion of British Muslims are wonderful, peace-loving, community-minded people, certainly in the northeast where I'm based. We have fantastic communities and they are really important part of our social fabric. There are a very small proportion for whom they want to challenge those values that we hold dear in the UK and which are British values. And there we need to continue to work in community to bring those people to those communities.
Call that a soft endorsement. But I want to hear what you think on this. Was Nigel Farage right? Email farage@gbnews.com or X with the hashtag Farage on GB News. And the man himself joins me in just a moment. In fact, he's sat right in here in the studio. But first, let's talk to GB News' political correspondent Olivia Utley, who's been out on the campaign trail today following the Lib Dem leader Ed Davey. Olivia, welcome to the show. So you're still on that battle bus. It's called Yellow Hammer 1, a bizarre name. A yellow hammer is a kind of inauspicious songbird that makes a lot of noise from the sidelines while not being very dominant. Seems fitting. Tell us what's happened on day one.
Hello, Martin. Yes, I am just drawing into Kendal now on this Lib Dem battle bus. As you say, it's called Yellow Hammer 1. That's because the Lib Dems plan to smash up the blue wall in the south of England with a yellow hammer. We're in Kendal now because it is the only Lib Dem held constituency in the north of England. And then tomorrow we'll be heading over to Wales and then to the south. It's the south where Ed Davey is really hoping to pick up a lot of seats. There are lots of constituencies in the sort of home counties which are held by Conservatives, have been held by Conservatives for years, but the Lib Dems think that they stand a chance now, including Jeremy Hunt's constituency in Surrey. It's places like that where Ed Davey is hoping that people will be prepared to vote as a sort of protest vote for the Lib Dems, unlike his predecessor Joe Swinson, who ran the 2019 Lib Dem on the motto, Joe Swinson, your next Prime Minister, Ed Davey is by no means hoping to sort of unseat the Conservatives and become the party of government. What he does want to do is unseat a lot of Conservative MPs in the south of England in constituencies where people are willing to protest against the Tories after 14 years. He is feeling very, very optimistic. The Lib Dems I've spoken to today are feeling very optimistic. They're looking for a fun campaign. There's going to be some I hear, Ed Davey not ruling out a coalition with Labour at the moment, ruled out a coalition with the Conservatives, but overall they seem to be quite excited about this campaign.
Thank you, Olivia Lee, live from Yellowhammer 1. Now back in the studio, of course, I'm joined by Nigel Farage, the big man. So, Nigel, quick reaction to the Lib Dems. Do you think they were doing some tactical voting?
I think there's a non-aggression pact with Labour in place. Really clear. One thing that Davey is not doing is attacking Starmer at all, and vice versa. So you can see what the pattern's going to be. You know, in Surrey constituencies, places like that, Jeremy Hunt's seat, for example, you know, Labour will put in almost zero effort, leave it to the Lib Dems, and it'll go the other way in parts of the East and West Midlands, I suspect. So that's pretty clear. I mean, look, I have to say, I think Sir Ed Davey is one of the least inspiring political leaders I've ever seen. Mind you, there is some competition around these days. But despite that, they'll probably get a low percentage of the overall vote, but they might up their seats quite considerably.
And they'll be going for those Tory Shire seats, of course, the NIMBY seats. Well, GB News' political correspondent Catherine Forster spoke with Sir Keir Starmer earlier on about how the Labour Party are going to tackle the current Channel crisis.
We absolutely have to stop the boats. There's no question about that. We shouldn't have anybody making that dangerous journey across the Channel. And the government has lost control of the borders. Record numbers have come already this year under Sunak's leadership. So we've got to get to grips with that. No country can lose control of its borders, and that will be a priority. I think that the first thing we need to do is to smash the gangs that are running the vile trade and putting people in boats in the first place.
Okay, Nigel, before we move on to that explosive interview with Trevor Phillips, any reaction there to Sir Keir Starmer talking tough on stopping the boat?
Yeah, we've been trying to smash the drugs gangs now for decades. And every single year we have to admit that we haven't succeeded at all, that illegal drugs are being sold more heavily by gangs in this country than ever before, and indeed all over the world. And you can smash the gangs if you want to. Makes no difference. You think about it. You've got a criminal trafficking gang in Calais making between 2 and 3 million euros a week. You can bring them a death penalty. There'll still be people queuing up to conduct that trade. Starmer is offering literally nothing whatsoever. You could argue that at least the Conservatives have tried with the Rwanda plan, though sadly the ECHR court decided it wasn't to be. But no, Starmer is offering nothing whatsoever. And in fact, I have to say, it's so dull listening to him that it's quite difficult to sort of hold the argument. There's no substance of any kind on anything.
He maintains that stopping the criminal gangs is the answer, going down line and not bothering about controlling our own border in Britain.
Well, he's making that argument. He's also talking about a deal with the EU, which may mean even more people finish up coming here than before. Smashing the gangs does not work. It's impossible. They will always be replaced. The point is, the reason people come is they know they won't be sent back, and they've got every chance of being waved through in 2 or 3 years' time, the refugee system. I mean, goodness knows why we allow so many in, but we do. So Starmer's wrong. This is our fault. The gangs are only there because we allow people to stay. Starmer will do nothing, and Rishi's plan's going to fail as well.
OK, now let's turn to the main event, the reaction to that interview yesterday on Sky News with Trevor Phillips. It's fair to say, once again, you've put the cat amongst the pigeons. This time you address really what many are considering to be big elephant in the room, and that is what you perceive as a lack of integration of British Muslims, some of them, with British values. Tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, look, the point I'm making is there is a very deep sense of unease in the country. You know, you see a Green Party local politician elected in Leeds just screaming "Allo Akbar." I think that's a bit odd. You see supporters of a victorious candidate in Leeds saying "We're coming to get you." And the polling that was done by JL Partners a few weeks ago, the most alarming statistic was this: amongst 18 to 24-year-old young Muslims living in Britain, 23% said they supported the concept of jihad. Now, I put it to you, That is not a British value. It is a failure of integration. And for all the talk we had from Blair, from Mandelson, about diversity, this isn't diversity. You're finishing up with whole areas of our towns and cities that are completely unrecognisable as being English. And I think that's undeniable. So all I was stating was a deep sense of unease. And that's why, you know, for Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister to be allowing 1.2 million people a year to settle here, I think integration on that scale is literally impossible. So Labour started it, the Conservatives have made it worse. Now, the reaction, of course, there are those that will scream and shout. There are those that will say it's Islamophobic or it's racist. Well, I just think when they use words like that, it's because they don't want to have the debate. They don't want to talk about it. They're losing the argument. I can tell you that if you look on GB News' website, you look at national newspaper websites and see the reaction from Joe Public, it's been overwhelmingly in support.
There has been a lot of criticism, as you'd expect, and you would have known that was coming. Zahra Mohammed, who's the Secretary-General of the Muslim Council of Britain, she said, so horribly Islamophobic and racist, doing what Farage does best, reinforcing his hate-filled rhetoric of misinformation. What would be your response to that?
She doesn't want to debate. If she wants to come and sit with me on a panel and debate this, then she's more than welcome to. You know, and of course, you know, I was talking about this, and it is a minority, but the worry, Martin, is it's a growing minority, particularly since the events of October the 7th in Gaza, that are espousing views. I mean, goodness me, there's a chap the other day wearing a Hamas shirt, walking down a London street, people chanting Intifada on the streets of London 2 weeks ago. I think it's pretty obvious to everybody that something is going very, very badly wrong.
Why do you think it is? We would expect those who are older, more entrenched in traditional conservative Muslim values, maybe less integrated. The concerning thing about this, Nigel, as you said, younger people seem to be more radicalised. What's driving that? Is it social media? Is it the environment they're steeped in? Why are younger Muslims seemingly more against British values?
What is happening in some of those Muslim communities, particularly in northern towns and cities, is they are achieving the lowest educational results of any particular group. There are even health problems in some of those groups, highest levels of welfare dependency of any group in the country. And it's in an environment like that, where people aren't progressing, they're not moving forwards, that bad ideas thrive.
But of course, the Muslim Council of Britain would say, well, that's because they're left behind. That's because they've been abandoned by policymakers. They need help, not to be attacked.
No, I think the fact is, I mean, goodness me, on this channel, the number of Muslim lawyers and business people that we have on talking about things that have got their own private observance of religion, but are a fully integrated part of the community. And you can see this with the Jewish community, you can see it with the Hindu community, where people have different origins and faiths, but we have commonality and we all get on. This is a particular problem in Islam. It is a minority, but it's a growing minority. And if we don't talk about it, we're going to finish up with sectarian politics, with people voting along religious lines in a very big way. And I'm old enough to remember what sectarian politics did in Northern Ireland. I don't want to see anything like that in England.
OK, we'll be debating that in much more detail later on the show. I want to ask you about a dramatic event today, and that is Lucy Allen, the Conservative MP for Telford, has come out and endorsed the Reform Party candidate, Alan Adams. Did you know that was going to happen, and how surprised are you by that?
Not very surprised at all. I mean, obviously, Lee Anderson was one that left the Conservatives and joined Reform. There are dozens of Conservative MPs who agree with Reform's agenda far more than their own. They know that Rishi won't stop the boats. They know that the Conservatives have lied, and I mean lied, in every single manifesto since 2010 about legal migration, which has now reached these record numbers. So there's a lot of disaffection in that wing of the Conservatives, and I wouldn't be surprised if there weren't more Lucy Allens in the next couple of weeks.
She's been suspended from the party. You're expecting her membership to be terminated? She'll be persona non grata? She'll be put out to seed?
I wouldn't think Lucy Allen would really care, because, she stood and was elected for a Conservative party that she believed in, and she, like millions of us, feels betrayed by them.
And she's calling Alan Adams the next Member of Parliament for Telford. Do you think she'll campaign or help fundraise even?
Well, it does sound like it, doesn't it? It does sound like she's absolutely foursquare behind the Reform candidate, who I don't know, but I believe is a very, very good chap. Look, the fact is, we're in a bizarre situation. the vast majority, I mean, 70% of Conservative voters want pretty much a freeze on immigration, or numbers down to very, very low numbers. And what they've got is a government giving us 750,000 a year. And I mentioned yesterday in that Trevor interview that the other, I mean, my really biggest part of the interview, we are living through a population explosion caused by British politicians that is damaging the quality of life of every single person in this country. We are becoming poorer because of it. Our lifestyles, we can't get GP appointments, our kids can't get houses. And just think about this. Even if you go for the net figure, not the gross, it's a migrant a minute. A migrant a minute coming into this country under a Conservative government. Far more than even Tony Blair gave us years ago. You know, we've got to provide a new house, a new dwelling, one every 2 minutes, just to cope with this influx. It is impossible. And I think for far too long, Tory and Labour have done their best not to talk about this. They've no intention of discussing this in a general election. And that's why I'm helping Richard Tice. We need to have this debate. And frankly, they need to be held accountable.
And talking of which, tomorrow morning, you're at Dover. You're having a Reform Party press conference. Dover, of course, talismanic in the illegal immigrants arriving. But also, you seem fully square behind the idea of making this an immigration election. Can you give us a sneak preview of what we might expect to hear at Dover tomorrow?
4 years ago, I was going out into the English Channel, filming small boats coming, predicting that if we didn't deal with it, you may as well put a sign on the White Cliffs of Dover, everyone welcome. And I said there would be an invasion. I was called all the names under the sun for daring to use that word. Well, since that time, 3,800 boats have come, 125,000 people have come, most of them young men, undocumented young males. I think that poses a very serious potential security risk to this country, particularly in the wake of what's happened on October the 7th and what is going on in Gaza. And I'm going to expose tomorrow the fact that Rishi can't stop the boats. Starmer hasn't got a clue. I shall put down tomorrow exactly what we need to do to succeed in the way that Tony Abbott did when he was Prime Minister of Australia and stop the boats coming from Indonesia.
Operation Sovereign Borders, of course, was the only big success on this issue anywhere ever on the planet. Finally, there's all talk of a Blair-style wipeout. How bad, how severe do you think the forest fire is going to be that hits the Conservative Party and the child remains that are left, Nigel? Are you going to help in some way try and rebuild conservatism in Britain?
Well, not under this Conservative Party leadership. I mean, they've absolutely burnt the house down. They've lost trust. They've lost faith. They are, I mean, really, people's feelings towards the Conservative Party, particularly these 2019 voters who perhaps had never voted for the party before, are unrepeatable. Live on air, ahead of the watershed, people are very, very upset. I don't know how bad the loss is going to be, but I just sense that the Sunak campaign thus far is a disaster. He talks about bold leadership, but he looks like a frightened rabbit. And even the National Service Pledge, when you start to unpick it, only applies to 30,000 people a year. That would be 1 in 26 of the 18-year-olds in this country. The rest will be asked to do just 25 hours a year of voluntary service. None of it's working, and I think they're in danger, actually, of spiralling downwards.
And where do you think those 30,000 might live? The Bibi Stockholm? RAF Scampton?
Well, I've absolutely no idea. And who would train them? Yeah. Given that the British Army has gone from 100,000 men to 75,000 men, morale's at an all-time low, you couldn't do any form of national service without a massive increase in the army. What Sunak should be saying is, we need 30,000 of you to volunteer to join the army proper.
And actually incentivise it. Nigel Farage, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us on your own show. I'm delighted to stand in for. Now, coming up, I'll be joined by the co-founder of the Muslim Debate Initiative as we discuss Nigel's comments on British Muslims.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m. if she has such ambitions, where does this leave Prince Harry? I mean, he's obviously already resentful that he was treated as a spare back here in Britain, but he would only then become even more of a spare if he were married to either the president or somebody who was clearly setting her sights that way and taking various offices.
Yes, clearly this presents a problem for Harry, because if you notice what their plans are, and there's Meghan's lifestyle blog, American Riviera Orchard, an odd name, really rather ponderous. I think her PRs could have thought up something better. And then this Netflix program on cookery and entertainment and so forth. Harry is doing a series on polo, which is a bit of an elitist sport, actually. But of course, Harry has got Invictus. And so they have to, as they plan, Harry must, it must be absolutely definite that Harry will be integral to the planning. I mean, remember, he is very emotionally reliant on her and therefore might be content in this context to be a spare, even if many people would laugh. But I certainly see, remember, you have to begin by hard campaigning. They're only putting in a each for their charity Archwell. If they really do want Meghan to go into politics, if that is her ambition, then I think she should make absolutely sure she's got the ground rules of how you do this in America. They've got to have a look at also whether they would wish to have their, or keep their titles in, even though they're in abeyance. This too is a problem. I mean, if you're really looking at a serious political career, I don't see it starting from what we know now.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m, followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain, followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now at the start of the show, we asked you, was Nigel Farage right to say Muslim voters don't share Britain's values? Well, here's what you had to say. And William tells us, I totally agree with Nigel. We are losing our country and fast. And Mick says this. Nigel Farage is stating what most people believe. There are thousands of British Muslims who do not subscribe to our values. Speaking the truth is not allowed anymore in this woke country. And another viewer adds this. I think it's a loud, vocal minority that caused the most shouting over this, and most people here are peaceful and tolerant. Now, before the break, we were hearing from Nigel Farage following his comments about parts of the Muslim population not subscribing to British values. He said there was a deep sense of unease, and here's a stark warning Nigel gave when he spoke to me just a few moments ago.
The fact is, I mean, goodness me, on this channel, the number of Muslim lawyers and business people that we have on talking about things that have got their own private observance of religion, but are a fully integrated part of the community. And you can see this with the Jewish community, you can see it with the Hindu community, you know, where people have different origins and faiths, but we have commonality and we all get on. This is a particular problem in Islam. It is a minority, but it's a growing minority. And if we don't talk about it, we're going to finish up with sectarian politics, with people voting along religious lines in a very big way. And I'm old enough to remember what sectarian politics did in Northern Ireland. I don't want to see anything like that in England.
OK, it's time for debate on this now. And joining me in the studio to debate Nigel's explosive interview is the media commentator Raif Haidel-Mankou and also Abdullah Al-Andalusi, the co-founder of the Muslim Debate Initiative. Let's start with you, Abdullah. So, the cat's been put amongst the pigeons once again by Nigel Farage. A lot of people saying his comments were horribly Islamophobic and racist. Would you agree with that?
I would say that many people have described what he said as race baiting or religious baiting because most people who are Muslim in this country were from immigrant background or recent immigrant backgrounds. And so They are a convenient target. 150 years ago, Oswald Mosley and Nigel Farage of his time, one might argue, from the British Union of Fascists, argued that Jews were a problem in this country and that there was a large population who weren't assimilating or didn't follow British values. So here we are in somewhat repeating history again with this. And one of the most dangerous things I noticed from Nigel Farage's comments was he was criticising anti-genocide, anti-apartheid protests in Palestine. Is it British values then? If they are the ones who are meant to be against British values, is Nigel Farage saying that to be British is to be supporting genocide and apartheid?
Well, hang on.
I think that's very worrying.
The anti-Semitism, the rise of fascism on British streets, it isn't coming from people like Nigel Farage. It's coming from the Islamists.
Well, fascism is to say that the country is more important than individual rights and so on. So anyone who says that this country should come first beyond people's individual rights or freedoms is by definition, or the state should come first, is by definition a fascist. So that wouldn't apply. Secondly, anti-Semitism, show one clip of someone attacking all Jews, insulting Jews or inciting people to hate Jews in any one of these demonstrations. We all hear a lot of rhetoric from...
Somebody said, gas the Jews. Somebody's wearing a Hamas sign. Children dress as fancy dress Hamas terrorists.
Then we have to see the video, show the video where someone said, gas the Jews. Right? Because I would equally condemn that like anyone else here. That would be abhorrent, but we haven't seen any evidence. All we hear
is there. It happened on the first weekend. It's not rumours, it's there. The evidence is crystal clear.
Then show the video.
Well, we haven't got it now, but it's out there. You can Google it. Rafe Haleman-Cook. Do you want to counter this?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it goes without saying that the majority of Muslims in this country are well integrated and adjusted, and that should be celebrated. But people constantly say, oh, it's a small minority who are like this. It's not. It's a very sizable minority of the Muslim population of this country hold views, attitudes and beliefs that run completely contrary to our civilization and our culture. And it's not getting better. People used to say, oh, well, this is just first immigration Muslims. Their children and grandchildren will be very different. On the contrary, it's the children today who hold far more radical views than their parents or grandparents. I mean, there was one poll done by the Policy Exchange that showed, this is quite unbelievable, 1/3 of young British Muslims aged 16 to 24 believe ex-Muslims should be put to death for apostasy. This is quite amazing. A majority of British Muslims believe that homosexuality should be illegal, compared to 5% of the broader population. 3/4 of British Muslims in this last poll do not believe that Hamas committed murder and rape on October the 7th. Now, you might think that's a bizarre thing for them to believe, but it's actually in keeping with previous polls. 31% of British Muslims believe that America was behind 9/11. 7% believe it was the Jews. Only 4% believe it was Al-Qaeda, which, of course, we know. More Muslims also believe that Diana was killed because she wanted to marry a Muslim than believe she was killed in an accident. Now, those are just the most bizarre things. But then you look further and you see that 62% of Muslims want to restrict free speech in order to protect religious sensitivities. 52% believe that there should be no picture of Muhammad shown. Every gauge you look at, most scarily, 9% of British Muslims, 400,000 people, identify as being Islamists and supporters of terrorism, and 15% sympathise with terrorism, compared to 6% in France and Germany. And 81% of British Muslims identify as Muslim first and British second, whereas it's only 66% in Germany and it's only 46% in France. We have a real issue here which we need to address, and we can't keep covering these things up.
Abdullah, that's a barrage of data. How would you respond to that?
OK, yeah, and in this very same poll, twice as many of the non-Muslim public, British public that was polled, were likely to support ISIS than Muslims. That's in the same poll, right?
These are five polls.
Well, we're talking about the one you referenced. So in this poll, you get some very weird data coming out. But that's beside the point. The point is that Muslims, if you ask religious Jews who have very similar laws and beliefs to Muslims, will say very much the same thing. They're going to say they're Jewish first and maybe British second. It was a big debate amongst Jews throughout this for many decades, and there are sizable portions of Jewish people that believe that they're Jewish first, and they even have gone to the Israeli. Let me finish.
It's double the rate of France.
They have gone to participate in the Israeli Defense Forces to fight as reservists for Israel, but they're not reservists in Britain. They would not fight for Britain, or they have not fought for Britain. These very same people. Why don't you see any complaint against their patriotism and their nationalism?
Because I don't recall Jews blowing themselves up. I don't recall Jews beheading anybody. I don't recall Jews flying planes into buildings. So that's, I think, one of the differences that we have here.
It's not talking about Jews here, but Zionists have in the past killed British politicians throughout the Palestine struggles. They called it. They supported actual terrorism, blowing up King David Hotel. They supported and funded internationally terrorist operations against British army in Israel and Palestine, and you know that.
Abdullah, if we pull this into the here and the now, rather than dredging through history, the violence on British streets, the unrest on British streets, the soaring
like the fox hunting protests and demonstrations that led to 60 police officers being injured.
Hang on a moment. Every Saturday in Britain, we are seeing the protest now. We're seeing soaring anti-Semitism. We're seeing politicians being forced out of office. We're seeing politicians in David Amos being killed. There is a commonality amongst that. You must admit. These figures are damning. And I particularly want to ask you, why is it that young British Muslims seem to be especially radicalised when compared to the older Muslims? I find that surprising. Why is that happening?
Firstly, I think that this is all a red herring. People are entitled to religious views in England.
Not if they force teachers into hiding.
These religious views might be what you might call conservative or ultra-orthodox, depending on, and they will be at odds with the liberal ideals of liberal values.
Supporting Sharia law as an orthodox, that's the point. That's against the law of the land.
But not on non-Muslims, right? And then no one ever said they wanted to live by Sharia law. Jews want to live by halakha law, Jewish law, and they even have Beit Deens, which is Jewish courts that resolve disputes in this country. So no one complains about that. Well, at least not now. The British Union of Fascists 150 years, 20 years ago did complain about that, and of course we're seeing history repeat itself. The issue is this: if Jews can have these things, if Jews can live in Stamford Hill and Golders Green and have their own culture, and relatively they even have their own like a security force called the Shomrim, and that's not a problem, and great, and I support that.
Okay,
why can't Muslims have the same?
I want to pull this conversation now, if I could, back to Nigel Farage's comments. I know you put a post out about that. Extraordinary. It's been taken down.
I put a tweet out defending Nigel Farage, and all I did was I provided some of the same statistics, and simply for telling the truth today, you get silenced, because I think it's almost as if the establishment elite understand that multiculturalism has failed and that Islam is a tinderbox waiting to go off, and they're treading on eggshells around it. And it reminded me precisely of the last 30 years in Rotherham and Oldham, when the police, the social services, the councils were petrified by political correctness and so beholden to this ideology of multiculturalism that they allowed the industrial-scale rape of young British girls by Pakistani Muslims for fear of inflaming community tensions. That's why Nigel Farage and I are getting silenced for speaking the truth. We have imported vast numbers of people into this country who have no intention of assimilating. They live segregated lives in Islamic silos whose daily lives pass with little or no interaction
Golders Green
with wider British society. And they exist in a world that's almost like a petri dish.
Would you say Stamford Hill?
One second, let me finish the point.
silo?
In these communities, they're like petri dishes where abhorrent cultural practices are being practiced, forced marriages, honour killings. Britain is now the global centre of acid attacks. We've already spoken about the grooming gangs that are taking place. These are abhorrent practices. We know full well that Muslims living in these communities are twice as likely to be extremists as those living in non-segregated communities, and we're only making this worse by continuing mass immigration.
Final word to you, Abdullah. I want to try and get you to respond to what Nigel Farage said. Nigel Farage speaking out, let's put the cat amongst the pigeons. Is it helpful, yes or no?
All I'm saying is that I feel that he's scared to use those same standards he levels against Muslims, against Jews, for doing exactly the same thing in terms of what you might call living in Golders Green and so on. Would you call that a silo? You wouldn't dare, because you'd be called anti-Semite and you would hate that.
How many acid attacks are in Golders Green?
You said if England's the global leader in acid attacks, then and it's not the Muslim world, then clearly that it's not got nothing to do with Islam or Muslims.
The Asian community.
Please address what Nigel said. Is it helpful or not? I mean, he's speaking truth. But
well, I think we have to ask ourselves: is Nigel out for the rights of the British citizen, the rights of the British citizen to protest and demonstrate? No police are injured or attacked every week on the Palestine demonstration and protest. Yet on fox hunting, the demonstrations that he attended, in one case there was a riot in Parliament Square where 60 police were injured. MPs' houses were barricaded by fox hunting protesters, right? Anti-ban protesters,
Okay.
and yet he supports that. But yet, peaceful protests go out for Palestine, and he wants to clamp down. The question is, does he have British rights, British citizens' rights in his mind as his number one concern, or does he have Israel or other foreign countries, governments' ideas that he wants to promote?
We have to leave it there. All I would say in response to that is I pleaded with the police to stop people putting that sign on Big Ben when it happened from River to the Sea. I said to them, there's a projector, go and take it down. They would not.
What's wrong
they
with it?
soft soap it. People find it grossly offensive, and many feel it shames.
And guess what? Guess what rights and freedom is all about? Rights and freedom is to have the freedom to do something, even despite people find it grossly offensive. Looks like you guys have issue with British values.
Well, it's not a British value.
Not Muslims. Not Muslim, because you're
defending freedom and liberty. Yes, of course.
All GB News does, it talks about banning this, banning that. There's a problem with this, a problem with that, and that they should clamp down on this, on the rights of British citizens to protest or demonstrate when there's clearly no anti-Semitism there. Not a single smoking gun you can present on camera. Just rumours. Oh, we hear there's anti-Semitism happening. Not a single time, not a single image you can show.
Okay, so that gas the Jews comment was in Australia, I believe. It was broadcast.
But we're talking about Britain. But anyway,
But the children dressed as Hamas terrorists, that was very much in Britain. In fact, the police posed for pictures with them. We have to leave it there.
There was the demonstrators physically attacking, brutalising students at UCO in America. No one talks about that.
We have to leave it there. Raif Helmanku and Abdullah Al-Andalusi, co-founder of the Muslim Debate Initiative. A lively debate. Thank you both very much, gentlemen. Now, over the weekend, Rishi Sunak promised the introduction of mandatory national service for 18-year-olds if the Conservatives win the next general election. Well, there's been plenty of media backlash, but in a moment, I'll be speaking to someone who thinks it might just be a good idea.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So plenty of heavy showers and some outbreaks of rain are on the way over the next couple of days, but there will be some brightness in between. This is all thanks to this area of low pressure situated to the north of the UK, bringing us those heavy showers. But low pressure sits out in the west, bringing some further outbreaks of rain through the rest of Monday and into Tuesday. Plenty of heavy showers continuing into the first part of this evening, but gradually easing overnight with some clear spells developing, particularly for Scotland, northern and eastern parts of England, but down towards the southwest, outbreaks of rain pushing their way north and eastwards into the early hours of the morning, and a mild night here under all that cloud and rain, temperatures around 12 or 13 degrees. Under those clearer spells though, perhaps a little bit of a chillier start with temperatures down into the low single figures, and it does mean a bit of a brighter start here. However, across parts of Wales and southern parts of England, heavy and persistent rain slowly pushes its way north and eastwards through Tuesday morning, and for Northern Ireland as well, that persistent rain continues through much of Tuesday. For Scotland and northeastern parts of England though, a bit of a brighter start, albeit a bit of a chilly start with those temperatures in those low single figures to start, but there will be some sunshine through the morning. However, as we head through Tuesday afternoon, that area of rain continues to push its way north and eastwards as we head through the latter half of the day, again turning quite heavy across northern parts of England and southern parts of Scotland too, so turning much cloudier across Scotland in towards the afternoon. Heavy showers then breaking out across Northern Ireland, Wales and southern parts of England through Tuesday afternoon, and temperatures again around about average for the time of year, around 17 or 18 degrees in the south, but definitely feeling a little cooler under all that cloud and rain. Through Tuesday evening, the rain continues to push its way northwards, although continuing to persist for a time across parts of Scotland, and further outbreaks of rain across southern parts of England as well. There'll be plenty of showers on the way through Wednesday and Thursday, but there are some hints of something a little more settled on the way as we head through the latter half of the week.
I'm Patrick Christys. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christys tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Well, this weekend, Rishi Sunak announced the first big new policy announcement of the election campaign so far. And Sunak promised the introduction of mandatory national service for 18-year-olds if the Conservative Party wins the next general election. Well, the Prime Minister said they'll be given a choice between 12 months in the armed forces or 1 weekend a month volunteering in their local community. And he claimed the measure would help to unite society in an increasingly uncertain world. Well, Rishi Sunak also said applications would open in September 2025 with a new National Service Act introduced by the end of the next Parliament. Well, while the Act would compel people to participate by law, the Tories were quick to say that teenagers will not face criminal sanctions if they refuse to take part. Well, earlier on GB News, I spoke to Veterans Affairs Minister Johnny Mercer, who described the PM's plans as a fantastic opportunity.
I think it's a fantastic opportunity for young people. The military service part is a really small part of it. And, you know, if that's what you want to do, you can go and do it, but no one's going to be forced to do it. No one's going to be forced to go off to war. So actually, I think it's a real opportunity. I think it could be wonderful for the country. The Royal Commission need to work through the details, but I'm looking forward to working with them, working through them too, and finding out what opportunities this can present.
And actually, just at the end of that, I said to Johnny Mercer, you're a fighting man, but this must feel like that scene in Zulu, but perhaps without the victory. That caught him a bit off guard. And meanwhile, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer spoke to our reporter Catherine Forster this afternoon. Here's what he had to say.
The desperate idea that the Tories are flinging on the table of some sort of national service, which isn't thought through. All the military leaders who've got experience are saying it won't work, it'll take resource away from our military, our defence. That's the last thing we need. The government's already hollowed out the army. It's smaller than since Napoleonic times. So, you know, in the end, and they're taking money from the Lifting Up Fund to do it. I mean, I think it's absolutely important in this election to focus on what is uppermost in people's minds, which is the cost of living crisis and the NHS.
So there we have Sir Keir Starmer calling it desperate teenage dad's army stuff. He said they'd lost control of our borders, which must hurt because, of course, that's the key phrase, lost control. But so far, I think what we've seen is a lot of attacking the ideas that aren't yours, but scant detail from Sir Keir Starmer. What's he going to do about border control, national service, defence or the economy? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Today was just day one. It's going to be a very long 6 weeks. And now for a brief change of pace as we turn to the all-important topic of cheese rolling. Because earlier today, one of the most dangerous sports in the world took place and a bunch of damn fools ignored warnings from the local safety advisory group not to attend the annual Gloucestershire Cheese Rolling Festival this afternoon. There they are, treading carefully. And the winner of the event, which dates back to the 1800s, is the first to the bottom of Cooper's Hill as they chase a 3-kilogram double Gloucester cheese rolling down the steep 180-metre hill. It hit speeds, apparently, of 70 miles an hour. Now, winning the men's race was Tom from Germany, while Abby from North Carolina, a previous winner, won the women's event. Well, our reporter Jack Carson, who wasn't tough enough to have a Gouda himself, was there and spoke to some of the big cheesers at those defying the competitors.
Slightly surprised, but I said I was going to win it, so managed to do it. I wasn't quite sure that if I had or not. I knew there were a lot of people coming in pretty fast, so yeah, I put in the effort when I could.
I just remember rolling down and my face getting beat up again and flying down, and I was just thinking to myself, like, there's only going to be a few seconds. I'm going to get to the bottom at some point and then it'll be over. I found out about it years ago on the internet, your rabbit holes on YouTube leads you to weird places, but I wanted to defend my title again. 2 years I did it. I was in the right place at the right time, so I traveled to here to do it, and this year I wanted to do it again to defend my title.
Well done to all the big cheesers who took part, and to Jack, who couldn't have done a better job himself. Cheesers, who writes this stuff? Anyway, next we'll talk to a member of George Galloway's controversial Workers' Party and the Gaza vote, and how it will impact this general election.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
So the UK's most popular baby names have been revealed, with Noah and Olivia again topping the annual list. In at number 2 is Mohammed for boys. List is on the screen here. Number 3 for boys is George. Then it goes Olivia. Then it's Leo, Arthur, and so on. And for girls, so Olivia is number 1. Then Amelia, Isla, Ava, Lily, Ivy, Freya. There we go. Any of those names take your pick? Where's Dawn, by the way?
Well, yeah, there's on the Telegraph website, right, there's a really good way linked into this where you can actually put your name into the search engine, and these are names from 2022, by the way, and it tells you how common your name was. And I did put Dawn in. It's never been that popular. Can't think why. And there were only 5 babies named Dawn in 2022.
Really? That's surprising.
It's not
Wow.
Full confession here, right? My middle name, Mum, I hate you, is Maureen. Why is everyone laughing? My middle name is Maureen, which is a good old-fashioned East End name, and that has completely died out. There were no babies named Maureen.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Names like Keith, for example, Peter. Would you call a baby these days Keith or Ian? Baby Ian?
Without a doubt. I feel like I'm in a persecuted minority, you see, because later on, when I'm watching the boxing with Terry, Steve, Mick, Phil and Kev, right, and Peter, there are no such names featuring in this list. We are dying out. Our names will soon be gone forever, and I feel victimised by it.
Likewise, I should think we should start a campaign group and go on a protest march through London.
Cans, what do you make about Mohammed being number 2 for boys' names?
You know, I'm not going to comment on people. You know, they're going to call what they want to call. What I find interesting is people that do double barrel because they can't decide, and you know, a lot of people do that, and that's a bit difficult because I think you should just pick a name. You know.
I tell you names that are falling down the list though: Harry and Meghan.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. Now we discuss sectarian politics earlier in the show, and the Israel-Hamas war has proven tricky territory for politicians recently, in particular British Muslims who are unhappy with how Labour is approaching the issue. Well, George Galloway and his Workers' Party of Britain capitalised on this and won the Rochdale by-election earlier this year in what was dubbed the Gaza vote. However, the party is not without its controversy. And just 2 days ago, the party had to drop its candidate for Putney over anti-Semitic remarks. Well, to discuss all of this, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by Peter Ford, who's the Deputy Leader of the Workers' Party of Britain. And Peter is also the former British Ambassador to Bahrain and Syria. Fantastic CV. Welcome to the studio, Peter. So Nigel talks a lot about what he sees as an emerging sectarianism in British politics. You got into some hot water over this on the Trevor Phillips show on Sunday yesterday. What's your take on that? The Workers' Party of Britain seems quite happy to go after the Muslim vote to get in power, yet Nigel pointed out they seem to share some values, a lot of values, which seem quite incompatible with mainstream British values. Does that concern you?
What concerns me is that we're not talking about the atrocity that happened overnight in Gaza. It is surely not surprising that many people in this country, Muslims and non-Muslims, are absolutely horrified by the atrocity. 45 people killed in Gaza, most of them civilians, over 200 injured, many of them maimed. Think about that. Dozens of children left today without limbs. Just reflect on that for a moment. It's not surprising that feelings run high in this country. And what is sectarian is that none of the main parties offer a voice to those who believe that what is going on in Gaza is a constant and repeated atrocity. That's what's sectarian. What's sectarian is to try to stigmatise the Muslim community and to try to call the peace marches hate marches.
Well, there's quite a lot of hate that happens on the peace marches, as you call them. We've seen a 700% rise in anti-Semitic attacks in London alone since they came out. We've seen Parliament itself surrounded by a baying mob, which influenced what happened inside in terms of a vote. We've seen seats driven. Today, we've seen new legislation coming forward to protect British teachers from blasphemy laws. The Batley Grammar School teacher still in hiding 3 years on. This isn't driven by peace, it's driven by hate.
This Batley thing is such a transparent election ploy. They've had 3 years to think something up, and now they spring it on us days or a few weeks before the general election. It is despicable that the Prime Minister should try to make political capital.
Do you condemn what the Muslim community did in Batley and Spen to that teacher? Yes or no? He can't work. He's in hiding. His family's in hiding.
The teacher in question was silly. He should have had better judgment.
It would have been better judgment not to have issued death threats and forced him out of the school, surely.
The issue today is that one party is trying to make capital out of this issue, and it's outrageous that they are the ones who are stirring up sectarian feeling.
If a teacher is forced into hiding and can't work for 3 years, and his wife and kids are also in fear of their lives and unable to work, how is he the one stirring up hatred?
There are laws to deal with this. Existing laws are quite sufficient. And there is absolutely no need for a new blasphemy law.
OK. Thank you very much for joining us, Peter Ford. And I'm quickly joined by Tom, who now you're identifying as Jacob Rees-Mogg. What's in your show, quickly?
Yeah, State of the Nation. We're going to talk about national service. We're going to talk to former MP, former MEP, and get this, a viral TikTok influencer who's had tens of millions of views talking about national service on that. So we'll get Gen Z perspective as well.
Superb. Tom Holders, Jacob Rees-Mogg. That's next. Thank you very much.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to our latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So there's been plenty of showers around for many of us today, and there's further rain expected over the next couple of days, all thanks to low pressure situated out towards the west of the UK, slowly moving its way towards us over the next couple of days, bringing some heavy rain and some blustery showers. Any showers that we have seen across eastern parts of Scotland and northern England will gradually ease as we head through the rest of this evening, leaving some clear spells overnight here, but down towards the southwest, a very different picture. Plenty of cloud around and some outbreaks of heavy rain moving in. Temperatures here around 12 or 13 degrees, but definitely a little chillier under those clearer skies, and quite a bright start for parts of Scotland and northern England through Tuesday morning. However, down towards the southwest, it'll be a much greyer and damper picture to start on Tuesday. Those temperatures are starting the day around 13 or 14 degrees, and heavy and persistent rain continuing through much of Tuesday morning, particularly across Northern Ireland and parts of Wales. As I mentioned, a bit of a brighter start across parts of Scotland, albeit a chilly start in places places. However, there will be some sunshine as we head through Tuesday morning. But in towards the afternoon, that area of rain continues to push its way northwards, eventually reaching into parts of northern England and Scotland later too. Behind that area of rain, plenty of showers across Northern Ireland, Wales and into southern and central parts of England too. Again with some hail and thunder mixed in, so some heavy downpours likely. Another warm day, temperatures around 17 or 18 degrees, so around about average for the time of year, although perhaps just a little cooler under that cloud and rain further north. Wednesday does start a little brighter for most of us, plenty of sunny spells through the morning, but quite quickly as we head towards the afternoon there'll be plenty of showers developing. Again, these heaviest across eastern parts of England and Scotland, and there could be some hail and thunder mixed in. Further showers as well on Thursday, but there are some hints of high pressure returning towards the end of the week and in towards the weekend.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Gloria Di Piero. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British